Generative AI has, well, it's absolutely exploded, right? It's changing pretty much every single industry. But with all this incredible power comes this really critical question that every business leader is wrestling with. How do we actually use this stuff without risking our most valuable asset, our data? So let's dive into that dilemma. So here's the core conflict. On one hand, you've got the unbelievable power of AI to just supercharge your productivity, your innovation, everything. But on the other hand, you've got this huge risk of feeding your most sensitive private company data into a public model that, let's be honest, you just don't control. And this is the question that's keeping executives up at night. I mean, can you really trust your company's crown jewels, your trade secrets, your customer lists, your internal financials? Can you really upload all of that into a public AI? The potential for a leak or for it to be misused, it's a massive, massive gamble. It really all boils down to this one fundamental trade-off. Do you chase the power of AI at the risk of your privacy, or do you lock down your data and risk falling behind the competition? It feels like an impossible choice, doesn't it? But what if? What if you didn't actually have to choose? To figure that out, we first need to take a quick peek under the hood at how these AI models actually, well, learn. Understanding this process is really the key to seeing how we can make them both incredibly powerful and completely private. First up is training. Now, this is the heavy lifting. We're talking about feeding an AI model absolute mountains of data. We're talking petabytes of it, just so it can learn all the patterns of language, logic, and information. This whole process is so computationally intense, it can take weeks, sometimes even months, running on massive supercomputers. Okay, next, there's something called fine-tuning. See, a model that's been trained on the whole internet is basically a generalist and knows a little bit about everything. Fine-tuning is where you take that generalist and you give it a specialized education using your own company's data. You're basically turning it into an expert on your business. And finally, we get to inferencing. This is the payoff. This is the moment a user asks a question and the trained, fine-tuned model puts all of that learning to work to generate a really useful answer. This is the AI in action. This is where the magic happens. So if that's how AI models are built, why can't every company just, build one from the ground up? Well, that path is absolutely filled with some major hurdles. You're talking about prohibitive computational costs, potential data scarcity, and of course, the huge data privacy and security risks that created this whole dilemma in the first place. So if building one from scratch is off the table for most companies, how do you get all that power of AI without the risk? Well, the solution starts at the very foundation, the hardware engine. This is the raw physical power you need to run these models securely. You see, at the heart of any private AI solution is some serious high-performance hardware. We're talking about systems like Fujitsu's Primer-G servers, absolutely packed with powerful NVIDIA GPUs. Now, these are not your standard office servers. These are purpose-built machines designed for the incredibly demanding workloads of artificial intelligence. Okay, so having all that power is one thing, but it's pretty much useless if you can't protect the data, right? So now we get to the real core of the solution, securing the AI's brain while it's actually working. This is done through a technology called confidential computing. And honestly, the best way to think about it is as a virtual vault. It's a completely isolated, secure bubble that's created by the hardware itself, where your data and the AI model can work together, totally shielded from the outside world. A key piece of tech here is Intel's Trust Domain Execution, or TDX, and you can really think of this as building a digital Fort Knox. First, the hardware itself creates a secure enclave. Then, your whole AI application and your sensitive data get placed inside this protected vault, and then all the processing happens in complete isolation. It's invisible even to the system administrator. It's security at the deepest level possible. Okay, so we've got the powerful hardware, and we've got this ironclad security. How do these pieces actually come together into something a business can really use? The answer is basically a generative AI in a box. This is Fujitsu's private GPT. It's an on-premises appliance, which means it physically sits inside your company's own network. It combines that high-performance server, that confidential computing security we just talked about, and a state-of-the-art AI model all into one prepackaged, ready-to-go solution. So what does this actually look like for the average employee?
Well, all of that complex technology on the back end makes for a beautifully simple interaction on the front end. An employee just asks a question, and the on-premises AI gives a secure answer. And here's the most important part. Your data never, ever leaves your control.
But how good is the AI model inside this box? This chart gives us a pretty good idea. First, just look at that context window. Think of this as the AI's short-term memory. At 128,000 tokens, it can process and remember the equivalent of a 300-page book in a single go. That is 16 times more than its competitor. This massive memory means you get much more coherent, much more accurate answers. And those other metrics, HelloSwag and Trivia QA, they're just benchmarks that test the model's common sense reasoning and knowledge. And as you can see, it performs exceptionally well.
This all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in practice? Let's take a look at how this technology solves a really concrete, everyday business problem. Now, here's a situation I think we can all relate to. A company's internal knowledge is just vast, but it's often locked away. Newer employees have to constantly go and ask senior staff for help, which creates this huge productivity bottleneck and just drains the time of your most experienced people.
And this is where the private AI solution comes in. By feeding all of that internal knowledge into the secure, on-premises system, you create a single source of truth. A simple chat interface, driven by the large language model, gives every single employee instant access to that collective brainpower. The bottleneck? It's completely broken. And this really brings us to a final, pretty big thought. We're entering an era where a company's data isn't just important, it's arguably its single most valuable asset. So as we look to the future, the question isn't just if you'll use AI, but how you'll use it. Will every single organization eventually need its very own private, secure AI brain to truly compete and to protect what's theirs?